Hi guys, my name's Tima and welcome back to another weekly episode of our podcast. Joining me today is Danny Bell, one of the senior brokers at Flambard Williams. In the office, Danny's known for his hard work ethic and drive, which has happily helped him fast-track his success in the company. Now, aside from that, Danny is known for sort of the advice that he offers us and, the light-hearted approach that he brings to the team. I really wanted to have him on here today to hopefully give you guys a bit of an insight to who he is behind closed doors. So I hope you're all right with that introduction, but welcome, Danny. Thank you for being here today.
No worries at all. Good to be here.
Yeah, finally. We've managed to get you on. You've been so busy the last few weeks, so we haven't had chance.
I know, been looking forward to it.
Great. I know you've sort of been, a bit travelling a bit, and obviously we've had Easter and whatever. So over those last couple of weeks, I've compiled a few questions for you. I haven't forgotten about you. And like I said, I really want everyone to get the opportunity to know you. So as I'm sure you've seen with the other guys, we're going to dive into property, but kind of focus it a bit on you. Okay?
Cool. Sounds good.
Amazing. Just to kick it off, first, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly to everyone? Just kind of give them a little introduction of who you are.
Yeah, I'm Danny Bell, as I think you've heard. Been here for just over 3 years now. Kind of came straight out of university into the job. A little bit of history in the family with property, and kind of just slotted in, and here I am.
Amazing. Well, you kind of answered a bit of the first couple of questions which I was going to ask you, and that really just touches on the journey where you started with the company. So you said it's been 3 years, and it was fresh out of university.
Yep.
So did you kind of know that you were going to kind of get into the company? Was it something you stumbled upon, or how did you find us?
I don't think you really know anything these days. I thought I would do something property related. Mm-hmm. At the time, I didn't know exactly what avenue.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of travelling after university, and then sort of 3 or 4 months looking around. This sort of avenue just seemed the most fitting for me.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of why I've ended up here, I suppose.
Nice. And where did you travel to?
We did South America.
Okay.
So we started in Mexico and done 7 or 8 countries down to Peru.
Oh, cool. So did that sort of, as you were travelling, were you completely detached from uni and what to do with a career, and then you came back to the UK and were like, hey?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you start off, you think, it's a cliche, right? You're going to find yourself. Like, I didn't actually believe that, but
Okay.
You think, I'm going to have some thoughts along the way.
Uh-huh.
You get halfway in, you're like, I've thought about absolutely nothing. And then you've also got like really long bus journeys, like 12, sometimes even 24 hours.
What?
So there's plenty of time to think.
That's brave.
I think more towards the back end of it, you do start wondering sort of what's next.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, no, I didn't formulate any plans or anything, I suppose.
Okay, I like that. That's I didn't know that. 24-hour bus journeys. I could
Yeah, 'cause
never.
When you can't fly and you're on a budget, so
Oh, yeah.
the
Smart.
buses are usually the only way.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. And you said your family have sort of done property. So was that always at the back of your mind that you wanted to follow in their footsteps with it?
Not so much following their footsteps. It's just something I see the value in.
Okay.
I've obviously been around my dad's company and stuff. I've done some work experience there, and I felt like I had a good understanding of property as opposed to other avenues.
Sure.
So it just seemed to be kind of natural.
Okay.
It seems a lot of people end up doing what their parents do.
Yeah.
Whether it's subconscious or conscious, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's always at the back of your mind, so why not, isn't it? You've got that introduction already. But one thing I always like to ask the guys is because our job is quite demanding. Some of us say we're married to our jobs, which I think we are. But when you're not working, Danny, aside from travel, what do you do, or what do you like to do to sort of switch off and unwind?
Nothing in particular.
Okay.
I've got a good sort of friendship group.
Okay.
From school, sort of quite a big group of us. So it's usually just hanging around with them. Whether it's a bit of sport or sort of other activities, it varies literally every weekend.
Okay.
We started a cricket league.
Oh, nice.
So after this, we've got our first game. It's sort of a super quick format, T20.
Okay, I know nothing about cricket.
Bit of rugby in the more winter months, bit of golf, bit of everything.
Nice, so basically just sports mainly.
Yeah, I've always been in
sports and spending time with friends, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I'd like to know, and I'm sure quite a few of your clients, is being quite young yourself, do you find that, I don't know, yourself wishing you'd sort of started in the property industry a bit later so you can enjoy a bit more of what you described, travelling and spending time with friends, or are you happy with the time you started?
It's a hard question. I'm not sure. I think because I had such a good time travelling, I'm always going to want to do more. If anything, I probably wouldn't have gone to university.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think 3 years, having done 6 years in a job, I think the value I would have taken from that would have been much more than what I took from university.
Okay.
I mean, it's the experience of university which I loved,
Yeah.
but actually what you get out of it in terms of your career is not so much.
Yeah, I agree. I always say that for me, university was always just a thing of getting to sort of develop myself and, you know, interact with different people. I think it's very different going from the crowd you interact with at college and then the lot that you get at university.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
But I agree, yeah, you don't get much.
You can never really... I never really know, should I have done this, should I have done that?
Yeah.
It's just going through life.
Just cruising by. What do your friends and family, or mainly your friends, make of your career? Because I'm sure I'm correct in assuming, like the rest of us, we're probably one of the few in our group that do what we do.
Yeah, I definitely work the longest hours. I've only got a couple of friends who keep up with the amount of hours we do.
Okay.
And yeah, sometimes they catch me in a good mood when I get home, sometimes in a bad mood, whereas they will finish at 5 and they're typically in a good mood after work. So
yeah, I guess that is true. It kind of it's how you balance that time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was going to say we're quite young, you more than me, but do you find that the more we get, or you get engrossed in your work, you're finding it harder to relate to your friend group? Because obviously this is a very demanding industry and it does allow you to sort of set yourself aside from...
No,
age group. No,
not really. I've got a close relationship with my friends. That'll never change, no matter what I do, really.
I like that. So that you basically, Danny at work and Danny at home is pretty solid.
Try not to talk about it, to be honest, unless they ask.
Fair play. I like that. and you kind of said this before. I asked you, what were you doing before? You weren't working in property before this? You've never done property before?
No. Not properly, no.
Okay, and so was it something that you wish you had a bit of experience beforehand, or is it a case of it didn't really make a difference to you starting?
I had a bit of experience just obviously hearing about it, sort of family conversations and stuff. Above and beyond that, not really.
Okay.
I feel like the best experience is just being on the job, understanding how everything works, and just doing as much sort of outside reading and stuff like that as possible. And when you're actually working, you know what to look into. Sort of when it's more industry specific, I feel like that's where you actually learn the most, and you know what to be learning, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I feel like we're always learning on the go. They're always throwing something.
I mean, there's always going to be new stuff to learn.
New books.
I don't think you can ever know too much.
Yeah, that's true. Is there any particular books that you've? I mean, I don't know. I know Jack and Chris advise us to read, but are there any particular books that you've picked up that have been beneficial?
It's just a bit from all of them.
Okay.
Really, some stick out, but you just got to take the pieces you like, the pieces you feel that you can sort of implement the best from each book.
Yeah.
And sort of, that's what.
Top 2 books that you've read, or related to sales, I'd say.
Never Split the Difference was really good.
Okay.
It was a sort of FBI negotiator.
Oh yeah, I started that one.
Yeah, so he has these cool stories. He mixes them in with sales techniques and stuff, which I liked. I couldn't tell you a second. No,
fair enough. We'll come back to that another day, but I'm sure you've got a couple more. And what would you say, Danny, is the hardest, not specifically for you, it could be generally, but the hardest part about working in the property industry?
The property industry or our job specifically?
All right, let's stick it. Let's take it off. I usually ask about the property industry. Let's go for our job.
Our job, it's very up and down. Like I say, sometimes I go home and
could be the happiest
I'm not
man.
in a good mood. Sometimes I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of the job. You do just have to be able to take rejection.
Yep.
And be able to bounce back pretty quickly, because obviously it doesn't work out 100% of the time.
Yeah.
It is very humbling.
Okay. Okay. Take our job out of it. In the property industry, what do you say is the hardest thing?
Not sure. There's obviously a lot of regulatory changes.
Yep.
And they're quite specific with different circumstances. So knowing all the little bits of information which are specific to each client.
Yeah.
Because you've got different countries, different incomes, different everything, which different rules and regulations
Will apply
appeal
to
to
different
different people. So.
That's a good one, actually. I think as well that is something that it can be hard. I mean, me personally, especially with the different, I don't know, geographical locations of my clients, sometimes you catch yourself saying the same thing to the same client. They're based in different locations.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And, well, we've got quite a few, but what do you enjoy? Let's, on a lighthearted note, what do you enjoy most about the job?
It's just always, it's pretty full on.
Yeah.
I don't want to be sitting around, so I'm not really doing anything. I like there's always something going on. Mm-hmm. That's probably what I'd say.
Quite upbeat. Do you think that, would you say you get bored easily? So this job, obviously, you can't get bored, but...
Yeah. I mean, sitting at a desk without sort of something to be continuously striving for,
yeah,
I think I would just go a bit
nuts.
A bit numb, yeah.
Fair enough. And, I mean, we're going to sort of focus on property as a whole for a bit, because like I said at the start, you do offer quite a lot of good advice to your clients. Like I've heard him firsthand on his Zooms, and you are always, top of the mark when it comes to giving advice. So what would you say is a common misconception that you find first-time investors have when the first time you're speaking to them?
Probably what it can lead to.
Okay.
They don't have a full understanding of what it actually means to sort of get involved now and what they can actually translate to over like a 5, 10, 15-year period.
Okay.
And then when you show them actually what sort of some of your clients have done over the years and how that can relate to them and how they can sort of implement the same sort of thing, they're quite surprised by that sometimes.
Okay.
Which is nice to see unfold as well, because watching the process actually unfold that you've helped people with is quite rewarding. Yeah,
and you can kind of I enjoy that as well, like educating them along the way, and then they get their second or third property and suddenly boom, they're experienced investors.
First time you speak to someone, they literally, some of them don't know a thing.
Yep.
And then by the fourth or fifth time, they can actually have a decent conversation. And you actually see how much you've sort of brought them along, which is nice.
100%. And on that note, what would you say is I like to use the word mantra, a common question that you find most clients ask you when you first speak to them?
Can I get a mortgage?
Yeah, that is true. That is true, yeah. I think that is a massive common misconception. They think that, well, correct me if I'm wrong with your clients, but a lot of mine will say, oh, we're based overseas. Does that mean we can't?
Yeah, even just overseas buyers are, can I buy a property in the UK?
Yeah.
Like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
And then, can I get a mortgage? Most probably.
Yes, unless, rare circumstances.
Yeah.
And then would you say, well, what is the most important stage of investing when looking to buy your first property, would you say?
Definitely just the first sort of setting out. You need to have a clear understanding of what you want, the options available to you, and then sort of narrow down from there.
Okay.
Without sort of starting off with a comprehensive understanding, it's pretty hard to actually know what you actually want and sort of which would be the best route for you. So I'd say just sort of initially just make sure you've done your research, not just what we tell you, your own due diligence.
Yes.
And that will just help you along the way.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me when, you have clients who have done exactly what you've said and they've done their research, but they have a bit of an argumentative approach, I found. So there's a fine balance between thinking that you know everything and also coming to us for advice, because we are here to...
No, that is, back to one of your earlier questions, that might be one of them. When a client thinks they know better than you. Yep. Sort of obviously specific to our industry, and they definitely don't, because they haven't done it before. They ask you silly questions to start with, so that's a bit of a peeve as well.
How do you find that? You bite your tongue, or are you a bit more?
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time you have to.
What is it? Well, I can't remember who was saying it last week. Like, you have to adapt, and I find that for me is the hardest part, adapting to that.
Everyone thinks differently. Yep. So you need to actually understand your client before, I don't know, you can give proper advice. And
100%. Because
not everyone's going to understand your way of thinking.
No, everyone is
even if you show them data and facts and figures, they still won't believe you.
Yep. One of the hardest things, guys. And what would you say, would you say actually the process of buying a property is pretty standard, it's quite generic, or does it really depend on the client that you're speaking to?
It's very generic. I mean, I bought one last year.
Okay.
So I've seen the process from start to finish, actually being involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that transpired exactly to sort of what I've heard. And
Yeah.
I feel it's very similar.
Okay, so the advice that we give is actually foolproof. It does
Yeah,
work.
I can vouch for it.
Perfect. Well, that's good to know. And is there a focal point you would say in terms of city? I know you said you've done it yourself. So when you were setting out to invest, obviously your goals are, pretty, I guess, similar to most of our investors. Were you focusing on a specific city? Is there a specific city you'd advise towards?
It's hard to give you a specific city.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there's 4 or 5 cities I really like. That's
Okay.
not just because I like them personally, just because I see the value in them.
Okay.
And then from there, it's narrowing down on your price point. And then also it's pretty project dependent within each city.
Yeah.
So I think especially the 3 main ones, well, the 3 bigger ones in Liverpool, Manchester and Birmingham,
Yeah.
they've all got massive regeneration areas. They've all got pockets where the values are going to fly up.
Mm-hmm.
So narrowing down between them is, personal preference as well as price point, and
Sure.
also just finding the project in the right area within the area.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. I think it gets down to, again, what you were saying earlier. Everyone is so different, and it really depends on what the client's hoping to achieve from their portfolio.
Yeah, also time frames as well.
Yeah.
So I've got a little bit longer than some
Yeah.
clients I work with, so I plonked myself next to the HS2 in Birmingham, which has been delayed and delayed and delayed.
You've got time, so it's fine.
Yeah. So when that comes to fruition, I should be sitting pretty nicely.
Amazing. A common question, Danny, that we get is whether to purchase a property under your own name or a company name. And I know you're not a tax advisor, but what would you say is the common route that most of our clients take?
I think if you're UK based with good income, every day of the week, you'd naturally put it into a company. Typically, if you're overseas, if you're just going to get 1 or 2,
Yep.
it's usually better to do it in your personal name, because you can obviously make do with the sort of initial stages of paying tax in the UK, your personal allowance and stuff. But if you're looking to go big, make a big portfolio, you want them wrapped up in a company straight away.
Sure.
But yeah, like you say, I'm not a tax advisor.
No, but again, it's something that we hear them say a lot, so we've learned a few things along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And what would you say typically yields better? I know you were speaking a bit about, the investment as a whole, the cities, and it's pretty generic. But would you say that a 1-bed, a 2-bed, a 3-bed yields better, or does it not matter? Is it just dependent on the project?
Yeah, it's very dependent,
Okay.
and also your management style. There's different routes which will suit different projects in different locations.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't tie that question down to one answer,
No?
I'd say.
It's kind of open-ended and it just depends on,
Yeah.
again, the client? Or...
I mean, and some areas have a shortage of 1-beds or a shortage of 3-beds, so
It's true.
they'll naturally sort of demand a premium and stuff like that. So it's, very project and location dependent.
Okay. No, I like that as well. And very common one. Short-term lets versus traditional lets. Which would you say makes a better investment?
If you get the right location, short-term lets.
Okay.
And you can stay in there yourself.
True.
Which is pretty handy. But yeah, again, it goes back to the project and the location. Most importantly, the location with short-term lets.
Okay, for those that don't really know or not, because one thing we obviously deal with a lot is clients saying that short-term lets, they're too risky, they're lower occupancy rates, why should we do it? So why would you say that based on location, it's actually a good purchase, or good route, sorry?
It's just the amount of demand it's going to get. So there's 2 ways to look at it. You need to make sure you've got the right amount of occupancy rate to actually outperform a traditional let. And to do that, you need to be near transport links, near areas people want to stay.
Yes.
So like universities, you might have parents coming up for the weekend, football stadiums, near your sort of shops and restaurants. And then, different types of clients. Some have the financial stability to be able to put up with a couple potentially lower months in the likes of January, February.
Yep.
But if it's pretty tight for money, people might veer towards a traditional let. So yeah.
Okay, fair play. I guess that's pretty standard, pretty reasonable. And is there, we educate our clients on not only the property market, but we educate them on, the market trends, the cities and so on, right? Is there a city, since you've been working with us, that you would shy away from at the moment, where maybe a few years ago you'd have sort of recommended clients buy in that city?
Again, it's got to be project dependent,
Okay.
but London is 30 years ago, 100%.
Yeah.
You're putting all your money there.
Agreed.
But now you've got to be a bit more careful.
Okay.
And that's the only advice I'd really say for that.
Fair play. Do you still get that question that a lot of clients ask you, hey, can we put our money in London? Or have they sort of just put it to the side now?
Yeah, it's asked daily.
Okay.
If you've got the money to do so and you're happy with slightly lower returns, then yeah, have at it. I'd like to think I'll have a property or two in London when I'm older.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're chasing returns, then it actually doesn't make sense.
Fair enough. But we obviously want to get into cities that are following suit behind London, where London was. So what cities would you say are not necessarily where London's at, but getting there?
Manchester is probably at the forefront. That's your top runner. Just with how the city's pushed on, and I don't think it's anywhere near being done.
No.
I think it potentially would get on par with London
Mm-hmm.
at some point in the future. That's probably the top spot behind London.
Yeah, and you said earlier that there are top, I think, 3 or 4 cities that you'd rank as, being top performing. So we've got Manchester. Who else? You've put your money in Birmingham. So where else would you follow?
Yeah, my 5 cities I have the most confidence in would be Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool, Sheffield, and maybe Nottingham.
Okay, interesting.
But I went to university in Nottingham. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, because is that because you're familiar with the area, or is it just be?
Yeah, both. I can, even in my last few years there, you could see how much was going on.
Okay.
And I know since then there's been really big plans announced for it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's also still at a very reasonable price point.
Massive university city, isn't it?
It's a leading city for universities. You've got 2 sort of major universities there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's potentially a good one to look out for.
Miss it at all?
Yeah.
But yeah,
a little bit.
Would you live out there instead of London?
I would not live there.
Oh, okay. How many years were you there?
3 years.
Okay, fair enough. So long enough time to experience the city.
Yeah, I know the city fairly well.
Nice. And then would you say that a city like London, there's ever a chance where it may yield better? Or would you say, no, it's made it now, so, don't, for a perspective of yields, don't focus on that city at all?
I see it difficult to ever become on par with the north in terms of yields.
Okay.
I just don't think it can. I don't think the rent can push up enough to be on par with the likes of the cheaper properties in the north.
Fair enough. And one thing I wanted to focus on, Danny, and I think I spoke to, it must have been Tom or Iqbal about this, but the type of a property that we always recommend our clients to buy in our, city centre apartments and so on. But let's take the attention away from that. If we, I don't know, let's say Nottingham or a city that's a bit smaller, Sheffield or so on, if we're going to be advising our clients to invest in those smaller cities, would it also be apartments, or would you say, no, it's a smaller city, you can get on board houses and so on?
Very much location again.
Mm-hmm.
You have to focus on the big regeneration areas just to see the most amount of growth. And again, personal preference depends if you're potentially looking to do some work with it or if you just want something hands-off.
Okay.
But if you do just want the peace of mind that you've got a good property in a good location, which can be very easy to manage, you're not going to have any issues with it. You're going to have issues with your type of tenant. Then the city centre apartments are just the natural and best route to go.
Yeah.
Just you don't need to worry about it, and you've got a good investment there.
Fair enough. So would you say that your clients are comfortable, or across the board new investors, when they hear initially they come in, I mean, I get a lot that come in and say, hey, we want to buy distressed houses, we'd like to do them up, and then we think that will make a better investment. But then they say, we want it to be entirely hands off and we don't want to spend a lot of money. So when you reframe them, do you find that they're open to that idea of apartments?
Yeah, you've got typically slightly older people, a bit more traditional.
Yeah.
Will be hard to get off the housing train. But there's so much evidence, so much data to suggest that apartments would typically outperform a house. Obviously, it's not complete in terms of it's not across the board.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it does sometimes take a bit of work.
Fair enough. And let's focus on the apartments just for a second before we sort of wrap up. One thing that is very common, and I think it's a misconception, is they'll say, but okay, we will do the apartments, but I don't want to pay a service charge. Is that something that you find is easy to overcome once you explain why they're paying a service charge?
Yeah. What people don't realise is when you buy a house, you're going to have costs.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Of course.
So when you can wrap up your costs, it's economies of scale, right?
Yep.
If you wrap up your costs into 100 apartments, they all have to pay their fair share.
Of course.
Then you'd like to think that's going to be lower than one landlord having to deal with an entire house.
Yeah.
And most people, when they buy a house, are going to buy a fairly old house. And they might want to do it on a HMO, so they're going to have 7 students in there.
Yeah. Gosh.
So, and I was at university once.
I really don't like
my house at the end of it it needed more than £1,000 of service charge cost to fix that. So
yeah, it's basically a bit of a rabbit hole. So hence why you've got to learn.
The more you look into it, the more costs there are.
Fair enough. Well, unfortunately, we are sort of at the end here. But I guess, like I said last week, this is my favourite question. Everyone's got such a different answer. I know you've already come quite a long way from university and so on, but if you could go back, I know you're still quite young, so let's say go back 5 years from now, what would you advise yourself on or tell yourself? And if you could fast forward 5 years from now, where do you hope you'll be?
It's a hard question.
What would you tell young Danny?
Just go for it.
Okay.
There's no harm in going for it.
Okay.
That's without putting too much thought into it, that's probably what I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward, as in what I want in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, where do you hope you could be if you could just map out? You'd be proud of yourself. Like, I'm happy with where he is now.
I just want to continue being happy.
Yeah. Carefree.
Yeah. Want my good friends still there.
Yeah.
Obviously, continuing to earn some good money is going to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just living life, I suppose.
Traveling a few more countries.
I'm definitely going to do a bit more traveling.
Get some more portfolio.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely a couple more properties.
5 years.
Yeah, I'll have a few more properties.
We'll have another check-in in 5 years and see if you've made it.
Sounds good.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know you've been so busy, especially I know we've got a lot going on at the moment, so I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. And yeah, hopefully we'll have you on here again. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in again. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Danny a little bit more, especially those of his clients who may not know a few things about him. So tune in next week. We'll have a few more guests on here. But until then, goodbye.